So I'm going to go ahead and give an update. Daphne, when you log on, just keep trying to talk and hopefully just keep yelling and I'll stop whenever you join. I wanted to give you guys an update and some background information on where we stand right now. So this is like a really worst case scenario for the redistricting cycle with the census being delayed or the possibility of the census being delayed and COVID. So let's start with the census. First, the presidential administration said that they were going to be delaying the census because of COVID. Now they have flip-flopped and said, no, guess what? We're going to keep the same schedule. Reasoning behind that is because in some areas it looks like, I don't know, I don't want to speculate. I'm not going to speculate. We're not going to do that on this call. At any rate, the census was, the presidential administration has decided that they're going to keep the regular timeline for the census now. So it's going to stop at the end of September. And they're going to deliver the data, however complete it might be, to Congress, or sorry, to the president by the end of the year, December 31st, to meet that statutory requirement. So right now, I think they were looking at 75%, maybe higher than that, maybe 85% completion rate. But you know, that's a historically low number. On average, I think almost every year since I started recording it and using statistics to analyze what their completion rate was, we've only seen a 1% undercount. So 15%, that's a very large number. And typically the areas that we're going to expect to see undercounted are areas that are already underrepresented, that have already been historically undercounted in the census. So areas that we want to make sure that we protect with the Voting Rights Act specifically are areas that we're very concerned about. So that's problem number one. Because of all of the problems with COVID though, Daphne, any luck yet? No, not even with your phone? Wonder if I call you and try. So problem number two that we're having is the public input hearings. So with COVID, obviously the legislature shut down and they did not want to open the legislature back up at the height of COVID. Now that the pandemic has calmed down a bit though, we were hoping to have some of these public input hearings still. Because, you know, they've opened up the rest of the state completely. It's only the legislature that has excluded themselves from having these interim hearings and having the legislature open, which is a little insulting to me. So the governor refuses to open the Capitol. The House has made the House rules so complicated that they cannot figure out how to meet to hold virtual hearings. The House rules don't permit it currently. They cannot meet to figure out how to change the rules. So we are probably not going to have any more public input hearings during the interim. So the members of the Fair Maps Texas Coalition are currently trying to figure out ways to have some of these hearings still. The House did a pretty good job already of holding public input hearings around the state. The Senate, though, did not hold any hearings whatsoever. And it is unusual to have both the House and the Senate hold their own sets of hearings in other states. When you look at their redistricting commissions and what their redistricting process looks like, you only have one set of public input hearings. And so it's unusual to have both the House and the Senate have separate hearings, but again, that goes back to their rules that they've adopted, and that's why they require testimony separately. So the Senate has yet to have any, which is very discouraging. We spoke with the Senate redistricting committee clerk this past week, same on the House side as well. And again, they're stuck with the rules that they've put forth and they can't figure out how to modify the rules. And so we told them that we would be happy to hold our own set of public input hearings for them. And what our organizations would like to do is transcribe the testimony, send it back to the individual that has given the testimony so they can read over it and send it in themselves to the House and Senate committee clerks. And there should be a portal by then for them to use to submit that onto the legislator's website. And so those hearings are events hopefully will be taking place sometime in the next 2 months or so. So just be on the lookout for that. Because the census is so complicated though, on the timeline, we don't know when that census data is going to come in. That confuses us a little bit, and it's going to kind of split us up a bit. So originally, back in June, when the plan was the census data was going to be delayed, and the possibility was looking strong that it would be delayed until after the legislative session ended, that meant that because the way our state constitution was worded, number one, we would have to have a special session to draw the maps next summer after the legislative session finished. But because our constitution said that maps would have to be drawn by the legislator during the first regular session after the census data comes in, keyword being regular, that the legislator would then have to redraw maps in 2023, which was exciting to us because that meant that we could possibly get some reforms through during the upcoming legislative session. So we started working on different advocacy ideas for how to promote that legislation. And Judy is going to be talking next week. El Paso had already passed some local resolutions out there with the city and the county, which basically support the passage, calls on the legislator to pass redistricting reform of some sort. So that's going to be next week. I'm not quite sure, again, the census is up in the air. I'm not sure what the timeline is going to look like. So we're going to be doing both, though. We're going to be trying to watch and monitor the redistricting process. Not only that, we're going to try to push legislation at the same time as well. And we're just going to have to play this carefully to see where our need is the most during the legislative session. That being said, all of this legislation, whether you're going to be advocating for prayer maps or advocating for legislation, is going to be legislation. So those maps are passed as regular legislation. So Daphne, hopefully, is it working now? Yay!
Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Okay. It doesn't look, okay, there it goes. Okay. My husband came back from walking the dog and gave me his earphones here. Thank goodness. Yay.
Daphne's going to be walking us through the legislative engagement process. Yeah, so I'll let you start. Do you want to share your screen?
I do, and I'm going to see, I put my slides up and then I share my screen?
Yep.
Let's see how that works.
Daphne, you're very quiet. Is there any way you...
Can you hear me now?
It's
I'll try to speak very much louder. Is that better? Can you guys hear?
Yeah.
Okay. It says host disabled my share screen.
Let me try again. Oh, because you logged off and logged back on. Just 1 second.
Thank you. Sorry, guys.
There you go.
Okay, so. Okay, I'm going to go up and I'm going to go to.
Daphne, if you increase your volume, it may impact our ability to hear you on your computer volume.
Oh.
Or phone volume.
Okay. Can you hear this? Okay. Well, hopefully. Anyways, so thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, everybody. And please let me know if you no longer hear me. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to work with Stephanie. And
Stephanie, I'm so sorry. This is Robin. We really cannot hear you.
It's me. Okay. Well.
For me, I up the volume so that if anybody else speaks, I'm blasted, but at least I can hear Daphne.
So frustrating. So sorry. This has actually not happened before, but do you want me to continue, Stephanie? Okay. So here to talk about legislative engagements, and what I hope to do tonight is to provide a framework or maybe suggest some tools that we can use to consider using as we enter the post-election season and then begin to engage the Texas legislature. And I'm glad this is a chat because I do hope that's what I want. I want to facilitate a conversation back and forth for us. Okay. Oh, that's funny. Okay. freaky the way this is done. Okay. I don't know what that, anyway. So a legislative engagement strategy involves decision makers, messengers, message, and timeline, and that's what we'll be going over tonight. The decision makers are obviously our redistricting committees on the House and Senate, our league and other coalition partner messengers, the importance of a consistent message, how our engagements align to the redistricting timeline, and describe how we can use an expanded timeline to plan and track engagements and events across the state, I hope. What you need to prepare for meetings with the legislators, what we owe our leaders, especially like Stephanie and members, so they have a successful meeting and we develop good relationships with all members. And finally, common sense tips. There are many lists out there, and I'm going to highlight a few of the points that I think are very appropriate. And this is all very easy to do. It's just not, it's easy to know and to kind of understand, but not as easy to do when you're in the position, when you're on talking to your legislators. I want to tell you guys that last week, I listened to the hearings from last year because I wasn't here last year. There was a 4-hour hearing and an almost 3-hour hearing, and we have a very good advocate on the Hill for redistricting. Stephanie did a great job, very effective, and so yay, I'm happy to help her in any way that I can. So, okay, there was another. There is also a tool out there available that I discovered, and it's on the league website, and it's an advocacy playbook dated 2019. There's the address for it. It is a good reference. It provides great advice. Within that document, there is a very small section that talks about an approach to advocacy. They lifted it from a commercial entity, and it includes tracking your goals. In our case, of course, our long-range goal is the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, and short-range goal is fair, open, and transparent process reform, pretty much. Organizational considerations like our leadership, the branch leadership and members, and all of our members, coalition partners, opponents. And then they had these other two sections. One said targets, and one was activities. And so I would not ever recommend or use that term target to describe a human being for obvious reasons. So what these really are decision makers that we want to build on our relationships with, so that we can work with them over time to achieve our goals. And then the activities. But otherwise, that is a good document, and I recommend that folks look at it. Okay, so we have the Texas State Legislature, 181 members, 31 senators, 150 representatives, their associated staffs. There's also 16 Senate committees, 34 House committees, standing committees. The staffs for those hundreds of people. So we're talking over 1,000, 2,000 people, Stephanie, I'm not sure. But really, as I stated, the two committees of jurisdiction are the redistricting, and that's a total of 32 members and their staffs. And the main staff would be the committee clerk for each of those committees that works directly for the chair and is the head staffer for those committees that pretty much organizes all hearings, prepares the members for the hearings, organizes and prepares members to mark up legislation and vote for or against it, prepares amendments for if the committee is going to sponsor amendments to that legislation, et cetera. So very, very important people that we want to engage and that are the actual decision makers. So the list of those is what I just stated. Chair and vice chair of the state, House, and Senate redistricting committees. Redistricting committee members align to league branches for focused and planned constituent outreach what I'm suggesting we could do if we, and if we're, I think we actually are doing it in some instances, but I'm not sure it's across the board. All those members back there that are on those committees live in districts, and we have league branches in those districts. So if we haven't already kind of initiated and built on established relationships with those members and their staff, we would like to do that, and we would like to know what those relationships are and track the engagements, and maybe even collaborate on the messaging for those in a kind of a planned way. So, I mean, that would be a thing I could see that would be beneficial to collaborate on. So that's an alignment across the state, because they are back in your districts for most of the time, actually. But even before, like between the election and before the session starts in January, they'll be there. So that's a possible time to engage them. And I said the priority staffers are really key. Within the personal office of the members of those committees, the chief of staff is the most senior staffer. All of any other staff that work for the member work for that person. And so that makes him a key, depending on the member and how they choose to spend the monies allocated to them for their staff. They may have larger or smaller staffs. If they have larger staffs, there may be other legislative assistants that have a portfolio that includes redistricting. And so we also want to know those people. District staff is especially key for the branches, like Donna Cameron, District 25, Senate District 25. Donna Campbell is my senator, so her office is in town. This is an opportunity to get to know them. And if the Texas House and Senate redistricting committees fail to get their bills passed, as in their plans completed and passed through the legislative process before the end of the regular session on May 31st, it goes to the Legislative Redistricting Board. I'm not actually recommending that we engage them. I'm recommending that we understand who they are and what their voting record is and what their public utterances are, and know their positions on these things. And that's them. So they get to write the maps if the legislature fails to do that within the regular session. And there's also a possibility that even after that, after they finish their work, there could be a special session, and the governor could call that, but I don't know what the chances of that would be. I would think that wouldn't be likely unless something unforeseen happened that would make it advantageous to the leadership to do that. So again, messengers are our lead messenger right now, the League of Women Voters Texas, for redistricting with the legislature is Stephanie. Stephanie, I think you're the main person to do that, which you've done a great job. We also have our coalition partners, Fair Maps Texas, but also I think you were testifying with Common Cause and others, and there were some very good constituent testimony last year too. It was very compelling, especially from the folks in the Austin area, actually, in that one hearing. I didn't look at the field hearings, but I saw that one hearing, and that was amazing. Actually, 4 hours. Whew. Anyway, so the messages. So these aren't our official messages. We haven't approved any. The leadership of the League of Women Voters of Texas hasn't actually approved any of this that I'm aware of as far as official positions, but it's all from our website. Yay. And it's kind of the reason we're doing this is the last time around it failed. So we support our long range goal is creation of an independent citizens redistricting commission to provide a fair, open, and transparent redistricting process And I agree with Stephanie. It's true. A lot of people go, oh, well, that'll never happen. Well, we got to keep trying. I mean, that's just it, because that's the only way things get changed in the legislature is through a bill. Anything else is just hope. And there was a famous Army general that wrote a book about that. Hope is not a method. So, and it's true. But we have to keep pushing this. And as we push it, it causes us to reconsider what our messaging is, and also we develop relationships that way with the people that we're working with. So it's all a good thing. So we want them to hearings and discussions to be nonpartisan and open. We want the hearings to be held after the census apportionment data is received. Otherwise, we're just talking about how bad the old one was, you know. And we've been doing that for a year and a half, actually. The public should be allowed to provide, actually solicited to provide input and feedback, including their legislators should respond to their concerns. So all these things, committee members should explain how they're drawn. Committee should make all data, all emails, all letters, all memos, all guidance, all draft maps that they don't use. And there was that thing, Stephanie, you mentioned it, and I looked it up, the Hoffler dossier. Not that we're all into dossiers these days, but the last time around where they didn't do that, like on purpose, you know, in the back room shredding stuff for what, you know, destroying whatever before it could have to be turned over. So there has been demonstrated not transparency or not within that process. So hopefully they will do that now. Committees should not consider partisan data, which is, I think, one of the biggest things. You know, if they do what you suggested, in Austin they did, they read your maps. This is the local level, apparently, and they use the Voting Rights Act criteria first, and then they looked at other things and did the other districts, and those districts held up. So to me, that's a model. And then I guess the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission that we are trying to get the legislature to pass is a model off of California's Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. So the redistricting timeline. I have another chart that lists more stuff, but if you took this timeline, which is the time, you know, the legislature's timeline, or actually the Legislative Redistricting Board's timeline, because it shows all of their work if they are called to do work. Basically, if we start November 3rd to when the legislature convenes, that's about a 2-month process. And then from when the legislature convenes to the 60-day point, which is when they have to have filed their bills, that's not a lot. I mean, it's 4 months, but it's 2 months and 2 months. And during that time, and there's September 21st, which is today. So there are a lot of things that we potentially need to do in that short amount of time. And there's a lot that they need to do in that short amount of time. It's going to be hearings, markups, going through iterations, going through the process of drawing maps. I mean, that is quite a lot to do for them. And that's not all they do. They're members of other committees, and the legislature is doing other stuff. So I don't know how, also, there may be a little bit of change within the membership of the legislature depending on the results of the election. I mean, I expect most of the members to come back but because most of them get reelected, which is part of our point, which is the deal, 97% or some rig. But there may be some changes in that membership of the committees, and and if that's true, they'll have to adjust. But we have a lot of actions that we can take. Now, imagine this timeline, and then there'll be actions throughout after the 60-day point through the legislative session. even through the LRB, we're still engaging with members, and staff. We're still keeping track of things that way, and seeing how we can engage. And then, of course, if they pass maps that are gerrymandered, that do not meet the criteria, then there's always legislative action that I'm sure our coalition partners or somebody will take and will support. So this is an ongoing process. But imagine this timeline expanded to show down to the day, and then imagine little putting in, when we do hearings, and I don't know, you mentioned maybe a league hearing or some other forum where people could provide input if the legislature can't figure out how to do a hearing. But all of our events, and we actually put them on this and say what it is and who's talking there. I mean, what level it is, what member, who's the messenger, and then have that available so that in one view, you see all of the actions that are happening, and you track it as it goes through. So that if you've got, for example, it shows, I don't know if it shows, should coalition partner meetings, but so we know what they're doing and they know what we're doing, but we don't duplicate effort, and we're reinforcing effort. And League of Women Voters Texas meetings and engagements are going on, and the branch engagements out in the districts or in Austin or over Zoom or however they're going to happen are reinforcing our engagements. And honestly, Steph, I don't know how in the past, I think you've done everything. I'm not sure how many other people have, but I think we could use this and kind of be more comprehensive in reaching out to all of the branch league offices to try to get engagement with those members out in their districts.
Our coalition members helped quite a bit too. And so the calendar that you're talking about of all these events, Dave and Lydia and Judy are usually the ones that are helping set up those events. So it's been definitely a coalition effort. But your idea of, using the local leagues or local groups for whichever group we're talking about, Common Cause or whatever, we've tried that. Not to the scale. We've never been successful at using that network efficiently. So if we could do that this session, this is the session to do it, right? So this is the time. Now is it? Now is the time. This is the place.
There you go. If not now, when? Yeah. And then identify. So all of those. It looks like a lot to do. It's a lot to do actually, and that's a list of stuff. And actually, I had a question about a couple of them, league or coalition partner hearings or town halls, the possibility of that happening in the November-December timeframe.
I think that's pretty possible. We haven't set anything in stone. We're just beginning to talk about it. So hopefully sometime soon.
Okay. And there was another one, lobby days. You had mentioned that date, which I don't have up here. I think it's currently in February. Is it actually scheduled?
We were just having a board meeting about it before this call, so I'm not quite sure the exact date yet. I still say that because I'm not there to advocate for a March lobby days, that is probably going to be in February. So we want the lobby days to be during the time when they finalize the bills. And so up until the beginning of March, there's no movement on any of this legislation because people are still working to get the bills written and filed. So March, I think, is actually when the committees start to hear legislation and review it and make changes and whatnot. And that's when you want to have your lobby days, but that's neither here nor there, I guess, now.
Is it possible to host other events, like Zoom type events or whatever, especially on the local level? I'm thinking the league branch offices to engage the legislators on this subject. I mean, I would think the ones that would be wanting to do that would be the ones that are currently gerrymandered. I mean, in a really bad gerrymander
Right.
situation.
So I think that's this whole legislative session is going to be difficult for everyone and not just necessarily people on the redistricting committee or working with the redistricting advocacy area. I think everyone across the legislature is going to be struggling for ways to find those forms of engagement. At the same time, though, I think a lot of these legislative offices will be more willing to set up Zoom calls. And so we might even be able to make an appointment and set up a Zoom call on a Tuesday morning or whenever that might be, to get some actual face time with some of these offices. And it will save us a trip to the legislature, which I would greatly appreciate. But it is going to be difficult to find those times where you get access to legislators to talk to them about this legislation or the maps or whatever it might be. So we'll have to get creative.
It was very effective when you were sitting there and you had like 7,000 signatures on a petition, right? And you turn that. I don't know if we're going to be able to do things like that, or.
I think we can definitely, we have the petition up still. We can not, I don't know if we necessarily want to submit the same one. I need to talk to the rest of the coalition members about it. But we can definitely do stuff like that to try to garner more attention or garner more interest from the committee to show that there is a loud response. In fact, one of the reasons that I think they held that committee hearing during the last legislative session, first of all, it was the first one that they held in over 8 years to review any sort of legislation. And the league and the coalition members actually drove, I think it was 5,000 emails up to the legislator. It might have been more, I can't remember, but specifically to the committee members. And so there was somewhat a certain level of public pressure that we put on those committee members just to say, hey, the public wants a chance to be included in the legislative process, and we want our voices to be heard, whether it was to support or oppose. We just wanted to be a part of the process.
The Senate, the House, I didn't watch all of their hearing, but it seemed to have more, be filled with more experts, and also Texas Legislative Council, those sorts of stuff. How is the Senate redistricting committee when it comes to openness to engage?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. We focused more of our interest on the House side because there was more movement during the last legislative session. They had already set up those organizational hearings to get ready for the next round of redistricting, and that was in February. So there was more movement on the House side. The committee on that side was more bipartisan. It was more of an equal split. I think there was 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats. Where on the Senate side, it was really heavily slated with Republicans. I think it was 12 Republicans, 7 Democrats, or something like that. And they didn't start holding their organizational hearings until this past fall, well after the legislative session. So we just thought last session the Senate side was a wash and that nothing was going to move at all, no matter how much we pushed.
Is there anything you would add to stuff we're doing in these time frames? I mean, they're pretty general. There's nothing specific here. Just covers kind of, I mean, it kind of covers the range of type activities that I think we should be doing or would be doing normally.
Last session, I think one of the things that we did was, and I'm not quite sure how effective it was. I think this session, I think specifically we need to first really focus on the committee members on both the House and Senate side. Last session, because I live in Austin, there was a lot of interest from local groups, and so I would volunteer to go up and help them. They'd write and say, could you help? We just want to go and talk to Donna Howard's office or something like that. But I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then I know there was a group in Fair Maps that specifically wanted to do that, and we tried to go around and speak to other people about co-sponsoring legislation, co-authoring legislation, and just drumming up support and interest in it. It's a very exhausting effort. So I think this year we'll just focus primarily on, number one, go speak to your own legislator, and number two, really target the House and Senate redistricting committee members. And maybe, like what you proposed, find local league members there to also do the same, because it'll be much more valuable if it's a constituent that's putting pressure on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully COVID will abate somewhat, but I don't know. It's probably not in time for. But okay. So this is a list of things. Oh, actually, this is another tool. What you don't see is this is a tool that I used to use. It was basically a prep session, and it was basically a paper that included these types of information. So again, something in one place that provided the senior leader going to the Hill. And that would be you. I could help you maybe with some of this, if you don't have some of this information. Provide that person, or in the league branches, the context of the meeting, where they are in the legislative session, recent votes, scheduled votes, hearings, meetings, events, what else is going on in the members' lives, in the staffers' lives, so that you're aware of where they are, and that there are other issues, but you know what those are. But you also know, you have a bio on the person you're meeting with that includes how the member voted, and any public statements, press releases on it about that topic. Talking points, which are messages, but specific talking points for that proposed legislation. And I wrote this before I listened to your testimony for a 4-hour hearing, but that's actually exactly what you did, and it was really effective. And that's what several of the people talking about all of the proposed legislation, and the pluses and minuses of them, one versus the other. That was that you should know that, and that you should be prepped for that. And then a copy of the legislation or a list of actions. At this point, when we would be engaging them, they probably already have the legislation, either writing it or, I mean, there's our legislation, and then we're going to run into they're writing the bills themselves, the plans, the redistricting plans. So the legislation it's going to get filed before, when do you think that would be filed?
The legislation is all going to be filed by the beginning of March, I believe.
Okay. So anyway, we write talking points for that person to prepare them, copy of the proposed legislation, and or a list of actions. So it's either the copy of our proposed legislation, or and a list of the processes we want the committee to follow in doing the redistricting. So also, you probably do go to the Hill with, or not the Hill, the legislature with coalition partner, I mean, have you ever gone together to talk to a member?
We have, yeah. So when the coalition members go, or specifically, it's usually Matt Simpson with the ACLU that I go with. And a lot of times I'll just say, hey, can you please go with me, so I don't have to go alone. But Dave has been up there on several occasions. I don't think Judy has made it out though. But we generally try to go together. Meetings usually go better when you have more than one person there.
Yeah, strength in numbers, but it's also ideas. You might have a lead person talking, but then another person could provide additional information.
Right.
So, and prep sessions. I don't know if you need like actually game it, have someone there playing what questions you might be asked and having you respond to them. That would be more for a hearing, I think. Kind of get prepared for that. Although I will say, and I don't know if everybody has heard those, but The House Redistricting Committee hearings, they were very civil. They were very, I thought, nonpartisan. The questions were pretty legit, and I was very impressed. I mean, after watching on C-SPAN in our nation's capital, the hearings that have taken place over the last year, some of them, those guys did a great job. And so I was very impressed anyway. But you still, the lead, if it's a person that hasn't met with them before or doesn't have the experience you do or it's new, a prep session to kind of not war game it, but just kind of practice might be useful if it's a hearing. And that might be something we recommend to folks going to testify at a field hearing, the branch members, if they've never done that before, to have them practice in front of other people a little bit and might give them more confidence if they are able to do that, if they're available. So the other prep is to fully coordinate the meeting with the legislative staff if you're meeting with a member, and or just meeting with the staff. So my experience is success equals no surprises, that they don't drop something on you you weren't expecting and you're caught flat-footed, or vice versa. I mean, just the subjects that you're going to discuss or anything. But so that's another good prep, and the follow-up quickly on any do-outs. And these are tips that are your basic, standard, common sense tips for when you meet with either a member or a staffer, because they're common sense, but you may not think of them. And there's all sorts of lists actually out there. Sorry, my computer. The league's handbook that I mentioned before has also a list of tips, and theirs are more about schedule it way in advance, show up early, and those sorts of things. But these are the basic, state of you are, identify yourself. This is just like for a hearing. Ask for their point of view, ask how they plan to vote, what their position is, rely on facts. In redistricting, it is very important that I think in any engagement, one-on-one especially, or over Zoom one-on-one, with a member to personalize it. I mean, how it affects you, your district, your community, having a voice and not having your vote count because it was not being able to solve community problems because there's no one to go to because it's split up. All of those things is those are very compelling. And be appreciative, be positive, be concise. You may not get much time. You may get 30 minutes. That would be amazing. Yay. You may not, but keep it to the time, whatever they had agreed to, and be concise. Follow up on do-outs. It's basic essentials for meeting with a member or staffer. So that kind of was what I had to throw out there, advocating for an approach to engaging, a strategy to engage the legislature.
So I think what we should do next is, we're going to listen to see what exactly the legislator is going to be focusing on in the upcoming session, whether that's going to be maps or legislation. The coalition members are working on getting that legislation refiled as we speak. And we're making changes to certain pieces of legislation or suggestions on changes here and there. But I think a good idea is to make a calendar of events and make a calendar of the timeline and put everyone's meetings on there, maybe like a Google Calendar or something like that, and share it amongst the group members that we know are going to be making those visits or talking with legislative offices. And then that way, maybe we can find some more opportunities to, you know, call certain offices or have more interactions, positive interactions in some way. So I thought that was a really good idea. Did anyone have any follow-up questions? Thank you, Daphne. We appreciate it.
Sorry about the.
Oh no, it's fine. I can hear you, so I'm hoping that it comes out on the recording fine too. And then people we'll just have to go back and listen.
I'm excited, honestly, about the possibility of engaging and so, and also learning more about the Texas legislature and how they operate.
Did anyone have any questions?
I have a question. One of your slides, Daphne, said attend events, but not fundraisers explicitly. Can you say more about that?
Because we're not lobbyists. One of the big differences between, or not lobbyists under the, that we are prohibited as a 501c3 from doing. There's advocate, inform and educate. There's lobby, which is to support a particular piece of legislation. But the big difference is contributing to their campaign or to contributing to a member politically. So any fundraiser would obviously bust that, and we don't want to do that. That is what registered lobbyists do. So, and we're not that. I just threw that in there. I didn't think that would ever be a possibility that we would even do that, but yeah, but that is important.
Great, thank you.
Judy, go ahead.
Loud and soft.
Sorry.
Too much. Sorry, it's if I can hear Daphne, I'm blasted. Just in general, I think a lot of us are frustrated by COVID things, and my suggestion is that we just move forward and take a step to any one of these many things, and it's stepping in the right direction. And just it's similar to voting in El Paso, where only 3.5% of the population shows up to vote. That one person that chooses to vote has a huge impact. So as people are struggling with COVID and deciding not to do anything and sitting down and crying in their cornflakes, if we take a step towards creating fair maps, it'll have a big impact. So let's everybody take a step.
So one of the reasons that I asked Daphne to give this presentation, when I was talking to her over the summer, she had like just some really useful, the way that she looked at, I call it lobbying. She's like, no, you can't call it lobbying. I'm like, okay. You have to call it advocacy. And I'm like, yes. Okay. So one step that was really important to this whole process, though, when you go and meet with legislative staffers, is you want to go there armed with a task that you want to get info out of them. You want to be presenting info, of course, on our bills and legislation so they're familiar with it. But at the end of the day, your job is to get info and report back, basically. So that was the angle. I never really had heard it put that way. And I'm like, that would be very useful if we could figure out some way of doing that. And that's why I was thinking that some sort of calendar or some sort of way, even if it's like a Google Doc, or emails get tiresome, I know, keeping up with everything. So just one place where we can store everything and report back on which legislator you met with and how that went. And if you learned any good, juicy bits of information to share with the rest of the group.
Thus the prep package, when you're doing the bio, you can stick it, you can put in there, well, they met with, this guy on that date, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or
And
they're not
also,
another guy. I mean, you know.
also the part about doing your homework ahead of time and just, perusing their social media to see if you can find any information that they had shared recently, stuff like that. I know also some of the groups in the coalition, Common Cause and Represent Us, also sent out candidates their own form of a candidate questionnaire, and they include redistricting as one of the questions on there. And they said that they did have some Republican candidates that responded that they did support redistricting, but I believe only 2 of those were incumbents. So the amount of Republicans that did not respond that they supported redistricting was much higher. So at any rate, there's also information like that, is my point, that we can try to canvass and look for and put in one spot to help people out with their meetings.
We included the redistricting question we're doing these forums with local candidates, the League of Women Voters Comal area, and we included that for our local county, for Kyle Biederman race, and for, I don't think Donna's up for, anyway, for the other local races.
That's good. I'll have to go circle back around now to all the local leagues. Find out which ones included redistricting in their candidate questionnaires.
Yay.
There's a question from Janice. Let me read it really quick. Oh, okay. I can talk to Janet, no problem. Okay. Did anyone else have any other questions? No?
I did have a thing. I can confirm everything you said about the census that I know, but I will tell you that it will end this Friday. I mean, our work here will end. I'm a census person. Anyway, but the San Antonio to San Marcos to Austin to Dallas, the whole corridor is good to go. We're like it's going to be at 99%. We're almost there right now. There are other parts of Texas that are not in such good shape, so that's problematic. But there are large swaths. The metro areas, the large cities, and the areas around them are in pretty good shape. Like El Paso's, I think, in good shape, but other less populated areas down there and in West Texas may not.
I'll have to follow up with you on those specific areas to find out where there might be undercounts. So maybe we can also help promote outreach efforts in those areas.
But historically, they've had undercounts in those areas, but they probably will this year.
The National League sued the administration. Actually, I think they sued the Bureau, the Census Bureau, to prevent them from shutting down the census so soon. That federal court in California that was reviewing the case agreed with the argument that was filed. And I don't think the Census Bureau is listening though, and it looks like most of the census operations are coming to a close around the country. So hopefully we'll get that extra month. And then there was also bipartisan legislation that we were talking about the other day that they slipped into the funding bill. Is that right?
Well, actually, yeah, there was, except that the House actually filed their bill today, and it did not include that. It's a clean CR. Oh, well. But it may change. I mean, I think they bargained with the Senate. Gee, no, I say it ain't so. But anyway, so if the Senate, the administration wanted to put continue additional funding for farmers. Remember, they were giving them the subsidies,
right?
Because of all the trade deals the president made with other countries that killed our farmers. So he said, okay, well, I'll make that up to you. He wants to continue that. That wasn't in the House bill. So they may be holding out to
negotiate that.
But I don't know. I don't know that. It wasn't in there. I got a copy of it today, and it's like, no, not in there. So, but more to fall. It's the first.
Could I ask Daphne a question?
Mm-hmm.
Daphne, are you saying that there's a 99% response rate throughout the I-35 corridor?
That is what I am hearing.
Wow. I didn't realize it was anywhere near that successful.
Well, there's a follow-up, and even
Yeah.
if somebody wasn't home or wasn't there, you can get proxy information. It's not as complete data, but you can confirm that somebody lives in a place or how many people live there, that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of what we've been doing for other operations, which are like group quarters and transient locations. So because you get 2 no contacts, and then at that point you go around to neighbors next door or whatever and ask, somebody live there? Do you know who that is? You know. So it's not as complete information, but it's a population count in a location. So that is what I'm told. So
That sounds great. I mean, that would be really terrific. I just didn't realize they had done that much to improve it from the original response rates.
we have the people in this area have been working around long hours and on weekends. That's like 7 days a week for the last 3 weeks.
Well,
All hands on deck to try to get that done. But
that'd be really great. That's good.
yeah, it's what I heard. This is what they're telling us. I have not gone into the computer banks to see all the, you know. So.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, if no one else has any questions, I think we're coming up to 8 o'clock. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm going to put the recording out of the call, and we'll also get the slides out so you guys can see that as well. If you are interested in joining our lobbying, our advocacy efforts, not lobbying, you can stay tuned to Fair Maps, and we'll try to put something together so we can coordinate a larger strategy. I would say email me, but I'm being flooded with emails constantly. So we'll try to put some other method together where folks can sign up to meet with their legislators, and we'll have materials ready for you to review before that meeting and so on and so forth, like that Daphne has outlined for us. So we'll get started on that soon. No, but seriously, going into the legislative session, we hope to have all those materials ready to go. Next week, I believe Judy is going to be leading the talk, and she's going to be talking about passing local resolutions in El Paso City Council and El Paso County. And then the following week, Lydia is going to be telling us more about how she keeps a large group of people engaged, specifically on redistricting, which is really, really hard to do. And she's got some great ideas for how to attract new members into the group, and ideas for different work to, keep them engaged with. So, all right. Thanks you guys so much for coming out tonight. And thanks to all of the coalition members that attended. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.